Welcome to New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.
What's good, everybody? Happy Thursday. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here on another edition of New York Got Game. New York Got Game. Can't even say my own show correctly. What the hell is wrong with me? New York Got Game, Knicks Weekly Live. We got it right. Bryan, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well. This is a fun. We were just talking about this. I really love talking about the NBA just in general and covering it as I have for a while. But the trade deadline, even though this year we don't know what version of trade deadline we're going to get because of the CBA and second aprons and things of that nature. But I still think there's going to be a lot to talk about. And as it pertains to this particular Knicks team, who is a contender per Nikola Jokic, there's going to be a lot to talk about with Ian Begley, who's going to be on the show. So I'm excited about that.
That's right. You heard from Bryan, Ian Begley, SNY NBA insider covering the Knicks and Nets. He will be joining us at about 9:45 to talk some Knicks basketball. Always a good time to talk to my good friend Ian. The Knicks, look, man, this is a interesting month because a lot of you out there, a lot of you might be watching on the chat, you're panicking early this month. The panic was real. The Knicks lost twice to OKC. The sky was falling. People didn't know what to do. This team is not a contender. They were angry. Some people thought they were frauds, and y'all were doing too much. I've said it multiple times on the show. Bryan, you can back me up. It is a process, especially when you get a lot of new pieces. So I'm not really surprised that the Knicks, who started this month off rough, were below 500. Now turn this around. Had themselves a winning month of January. A lot of people didn't think that might happen at the beginning of January. They're currently on a 5-game winning streak. And I think there's real excitement and real reason to be excited with the way this team looks right now during this 5-game winning streak. You got the numbers there. They're averaging 125.2 points per game. That I honestly, that's nice. We know the Knicks are a good offensive team. It's the defense that I'm very impressed with during the stretch. And this goes back to the first game they won in the streak, starting at Atlanta a little bit over a week ago. The defense has been really impressive to me. If they're playing defense like this, in my opinion, they look like a contender when they play this good defensively. That's how good they can be. They look like a top 10 defense the way they played in the last week. And they've put it on some good offenses. This isn't like, I'll say this right now. You might have been impressed with the 9-game winning streak in December. This 5-game winning streak is more impressive.
I agree, 1,000%.
Absolutely more impressive because of who they've beaten, how they've beaten them. And it's not about the offense. You'd be like, oh, Dex, they put up 143 back-to-back against Sacramento and Memphis. I don't care about the points. I don't care. I care that they were stopping people, getting stops, getting it done. Against Denver, they come back in the third quarter. Denver takes an 8-point lead. What do the Knicks do? They get stops. They get turnovers. And Jalen Brunson did Jalen Brunson things. We'll get to him later. But Bryan, it's the defense for me. I'm glad you agree with me on this. This Knicks team is starting to defend the way we knew they needed to defend. So for you, I say defense is number one for me. What's impressed you the most during this 5-game winning streak?
It's defense, particularly in the fourth quarter. That's where it is for me. In the last 3 games, they've given up in order 20, 22, and 26 points in the fourth quarter. Points don't always tell the full story as it pertains to defense in the NBA, but that is about where you want to be defensively. I mean, even in previous eras, but specifically in this one with the 26 points that you allowed against Denver in the fourth quarter, because the 26 points, that's putting you at a pace where you're scoring 104 points in a game, and 104 points is not what it used to be. Like 104 points would be a lot in the 90s in a game. Now you're one of the worst scoring teams in the NBA, maybe the worst scoring team in the NBA if that's the case. The fourth quarter defense has been really good. And Dex, to your point, we circled ahead of this month, a couple weeks ago, whenever it was, a few weeks ago, this stretch, and we even talked about this last week, this stretch of 5 games after the Nets game, because the Nets are the Nets, no disrespect. But the Kings, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Lakers, and Rockets as 5 teams who have playoff aspirations, and I would say there are at least one or two contenders in there in Denver and perhaps Memphis. Houston also could be there because they've been awesome and they just beat Boston in Boston, although Boston hasn't been awesome at home. Definitely not against the spread. But you've got some teams there who are winning at a good enough rate. And it was like, okay, could the Knicks get to 4-1 on this stretch, maybe 3-2 at worst? And it looks like they could be headed for 5-0. We're not going to jinx it necessarily, but Dex, the fourth quarter defense for me, and then overall, to your point about the defense is back up to 15. So we've talked about how it slid back down to like that 18-19 range. Eventually get into that top 10 to 12 range for the end of the season. That part we don't know yet, but back up to 15 during this stretch is encouraging. And then on top of that, the offense has just been like, this is, again, an elite offense. And we've seen it time and again, and they've been much better over the last few games for sure.
Oh, yeah. And there's something to, I've been to how many games during the streak? I've been to 3 games during the streak. I was at the Atlanta game, went to the Memphis game, and the Denver game, right? So I've been to 3 to 5 games during the streak. And this team, they're talking about the defense. They're talking about how connected they are. We'll talk more with Ian Begley about this. And I think they've risen to this challenge. I think there was some frustration with some losses earlier this month that I was at. I think this team knows that they had to get it together on that end. They seem very focused on that. There's a focus I sense around this Knicks team right now with this challenge. They've heard the talk. They know some of y'all out there say, oh, they haven't beaten anybody. And let's be fair, they haven't. I said at the beginning of the month they weren't contenders. Yeah. But things can change quick in the New York Minute, folks. Things can change real quick. And it's a process. This is why you can't go crazy. You can't be jumping out the window. I'll even say this. You can't get too crazy about this 5-game winning streak. Things can change in the New York Minute. It can go back the other way. I'm not saying that it can't. It can absolutely go back the other way. But do I think that'll happen? No. I think this team, their goal is to play their best basketball towards the end of the season. I think you should be really encouraged if you're a Knicks fan. Are there things to clean up? Absolutely. This is by far not a finished product. We still have the trade deadline coming up, and we'll have a lot to talk about with that, particularly in the next week on this show. And we let y'all know we have a trade deadline show coming up next Thursday at 2 o'clock. We'll have some special guests for that. More to come on that later. But if you wanted to see the Knicks have some signature wins, if you didn't think they had any before, I think they've shown you in the last couple of games. They beat 2 of the top 5 teams in the West, right? If they win Saturday against the Lakers, that's 3 of the top 6 in the West. If they win on Monday against the Rockets, that'll be 4 of the top 5 teams in the West. That's pretty impressive. And if you're going to boo-hoo and cry about the fact they did not beat Oklahoma City, who might be the best team in the NBA,
yeah.
Okay, maybe they're not there yet. But I think with these wins, they've put themselves to the fact that they're at least should be considered in contender status. That much I will say. Now, talking about last night's game, the other thing you got to talk about is Jalen Brunson. Guys, what was impressive to me in this game, not the scoring barrages we saw from Jalen Brunson. It's not even 30 points. I told you, I'm not that impressed with the points right now. He had 18 in the third when they needed the points. But I was actually more impressed in the fourth, where I believe he had 7 dimes. And some of these dimes were ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Some pinpoint passes, finding his guys. This guy has become a better floor general. We talked about how he was a walking bucket last year. He's still undersized. He's got the amazing footwork. But we talked about at the beginning of this year, from the first live show we did, one of our real or nots was, would Jalen Brunson, would he take the over on his assist? Would he go over 7 assists? And Bryan and I, we both like that. The offensive ceiling of this team is fine because Jalen Brunson knows when to score, knows when to find guys. I was very impressed with. I thought it was one of his best games. He was the third Knick to ever have a 30-15 game. Only Walt Clyde Frazier, Richie Guerin had done that before. Look, man, I'm not going to say anything else other than the leadership is real. I'm going to just leave it at that. This man is a leader and knows what he's doing. When his team needed buckets, he got him buckets. When he needed to find and get his other teammates involved, he was great at that too. OG Anunoby, tremendous against Denver last night. Tremendous. Jalen Brunson just keeps doing Jalen Brunson thing. I've run out of things to say about Jalen Brunson because nothing he does now surprises me.
Yeah.
He's at that level of player. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
like,
gotten to that point. To your point, the fourth quarter, he had 7 assists.
7 assists. I had that right. Okay.
The better number, 0 turnovers.
Yeah,
you knew what I was going to do.
I know where you're going. 0 turnovers. Because a lot of people give you some dimes. They turn the ball over 5 times. And what good is that if you're killing your team and wasting possessions? It means nothing. You're right. That is the bigger number, Brian. You are 100% right, sir. That is the bigger number. 7 dots. And some of these passes, y'all were watching the game. I know the fans in here. Shout out to everybody watching on YouTube or watching on X, watching on Facebook if you are. I know y'all were watching. These dimes were sick.
Yeah.
No turnovers.
It's that, and also one real PG stand up. You know I love a good assist to turnover ratio.
I know you do.
You know what I mean? And I've said this before. You can dominate an NBA game with just assists if your playmaking is that elite, which it was for Jalen Brunson, just all game, but also down the stretch in particular. He took 1 shot in the fourth quarter.
Yep. After scoring 18 in the third.
But he is so in control. Like when he's on, he's so in control. He has a pulse on the game like few other NBA players in the league, period. Like the way he can just impact the game from a scoring and playmaking perspective. Like, when you need, all right, you're down 8 and your team hasn't scored in 2 minutes, and Jalen Brunson, and you kind of know what he's going to do on offense, but he can go get you a bucket. He can set guys up. I kind of think he has the potential to have more of these blow up assist games as the offense is sort of functioning like this, firing on all cylinders, so to speak. The 30 and 15, I'm actually a touch surprised Stephon Marbury didn't do this in a Knicks uniform at least one time because he's had some ridiculous.
Wait. Hey, I understand why you were surprised with the talent.
A touch.
But did he have guys around him that he was capable of getting 15 assists on that team?
That's like fair.
And listen, Marbury's one of my guys.
Maybe it would have to be like as soon as he got there in 03-04 where they made it to the playoffs, although they were under 500.
That's a Tim Thomas, Eddie Curry.
Yeah.
Jamal Crawford. Jamal Crawford's on the team?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
No, after that.
That's the
still with the Bulls.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the NBA Live 04, 05 era.
I wouldn't have trusted those. I wouldn't have trusted enough guys in that team to finish for me. That's all I'm saying.
But Jalen Brunson, I mean, was awesome in the fourth quarter. You mentioned OG Anunoby. Like, hats off to him defensively. Also, nice to see Deuce McBride put together a couple of back-to-back games. I've been wanting more from him in general. And I feel like over the last couple of games, especially last game against Denver, just want to give you like 5 of 9 from the field. More encouraging. 2 of 5 from 3. I think you want to see, him do that a little bit more regularly. It was his best 3-point shooting performance since, honestly, that game in Philadelphia that they won, which is now a couple weeks ago. And we're going to talk about this with him, and we've been talking about this on the show. For a bench where you want to continue to see like some measure of consistency, Deuce McBride is obviously very key to that, very important to that. And for him to have a couple of back-to-back games in these spots, like you're going to be in playoff-type atmospheres, playoff games, playing against playoff teams, and Deuce McBride is going to be one of those guys you look to come off the bench. So to see him put together a couple back-to-back games where it's 14 and 12, and it felt meaningful, like, yeah, that matters too. So after a little bit of a slump, we'll see if he starts to break out of it, because I think that'll be very key in what we sort of look at from this rotation moving forward, Dex.
No, I think that's a good point regarding Deuce. He had been slumped for a while. I thought the Knicks needed a little bit more productivity from him off the bench. Do remember he's had a couple of nagging injuries with the hamstring, and maybe he's just finally getting right. I think in the last 2 games, and I really watched after the Memphis game, I was like, okay, he looks like he's getting a little bit of a shot back. And I really was watching him closely at the Garden last night because I was like, okay, does he kind of have that bounce? I watched him actually early before the game in warmups. And then in the game, I was like, okay, he's looking good, even dribbling when he's trying to get into the paint. He just looked more comfortable. And I wonder if he's just getting back to being him. The other thing, too, is the other thing we've seen since the Atlanta game, and we'll get into this when Ian joins us. Ian Begley will be joining us very shortly to talk some Knicks hoops. It seems like Tibbs is trusting the bench a little bit more. I talked about this with Stephen Bondi on this week's episode. Seems like he's trusting the bench more. Now, look, I won't go crazy on that either. I said everything is a process, guys.
Yeah.
Everything is a process. And I don't want the minutes police. Please don't come for me. I know y'all are out there. Please don't come for me. But everything's a process. But he has been seemed a little bit more trust in the bench. He's been playing a 9-man rotation. Landry Shamet did not play a lot last night. He only played a little bit in the first half. He did play more against Memphis, but that's something I think to keep an eye on as well, too. But while we wait for Ian Begley, for everybody in the chat, Bryan and I did this last week. We will do this again. What do some of you want the Knicks to do with the trade deadline? We're going to ask Ian Begley about this. Now, I'm telling people, please come up with some good trades. Last week, some of y'all were blessing us.
There was some Zion Williamson.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, come on, y'all ain't serious. Be serious. We want serious viewers up here. We know we're some intelligent Knicks fans. You love the Knicks. I know you want to see them win, but come on, man. Let's keep it real here. So, what do you want to see the Knicks do with the deadline? That is coming up a week from today.
And it doesn't even need to be a player, although that would help. But like, you can give us an archetype. Do you want to see them get a creator from the backcourt spot? Do you want to see them get a wing, a multi-positional defender, a 3-and-D guy? Do you want to see them get a big who can, I guess, play the Mitchell Robinson role or fill in for him if you're worried about Mitchell Robinson and feel like you need to move him to potentially get somebody else, as we've been talking about on the show ad nauseum. So there's a couple of different, or not a couple, there's a few different instances you could go about sort of improving this team and particularly the rotation. So if you do have any archetypes, like if you want to see them add a specific type of player or multiple, then let us know, because I'll be curious to see what you guys come up with. Just be careful, because the trade machine might forget a couple of things about the CBA. So just keep that in mind as you're utilizing it to come up with your trades.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what some of you guys come up with here for some trades. But like, look, I think you got to be encouraged, as we talked about with the Knicks defense. Bryan, right now, if you look at NBA.com, they're ranked 15th in defensive rating. If you look at cleaning the glass, which I always love to look at because they take out the garbage time minutes, they are 13th. So they are trending in the right direction. That's at 113.7 points per possession on defense. They are trending in the right direction. They had dropped back down to 18th and then 16th, so they're climbing back up. We've talked all season long. Can they get into that top 11, top 10 range? Can they do that? They are knocking on that door. There's some work to be done, and they have some, they have some quality opponents still to play, and still past what we talked about with the Rockets. They've got the Celtics next Saturday. They have the Hawks again next month, although the Hawks just lost Jalen Johnson. That is a huge blow for them.
Yes.
So they have some other opponents coming up that will test them. It is not going to be that easy, but I think the Knicks have been rising to the occasion, trying to pass these tests, and we'll see. Once again, shout out to everybody in the chat. Ian Begley will be tapping in with us soon. We appreciate you for checking in and commenting. I know you guys have been appreciating everything New York got game. That's for sure. Yeah, Knicks looking good. They got some game right now. Appreciate you checking in, JG. We will see how the Knicks do. So no, sir. That was a great block by karl-anthony Towns. Do you think that was a goaltend on Russ? You see that play, Bryan?
I did, yeah. I agree with you. It's interesting. I'll say this about Russell Westbrook, though. Like, I mean, he has been very much a positive for Denver.
Absolutely.
Like, I was wondering. I was like, he could really hurt this Knicks team potentially in this game. Just sort of going into it, just because like he's really added a lot to their starting lineup, and he did have a good, 14 rebounds. That's a card, which he tends to do every now and again still. But at the same time, yeah, karl-anthony Towns, good job. That's what I'll say.
That was it. Listen, you want to see more of that from Cat. The crowd got pumped on that one.
Yeah, I just saw it, and I'm like, man, if he does this in a playoff game, MSG is going to just lose their damn minds.
Yeah, and look, I was a little concerned with yesterday's game against the Nuggets because Nikola Jokic was in foul trouble. Didn't play most of the first quarter.
Yeah,
it was all the first quarter.
Yeah, great if you were playing against him in fantasy.
Yes, that helped you. And then the Knicks weren't up by that much at halftime. They never really got a lot of separation. So I was a little concerned about how this game was going. But Nuggets are a good team, and they fought really hard. Jamal Murray started cooking early in the third. But look, you got to give the Knicks credit. They did what they had to do.
It also helps that Denver has also been all season just kind of searching for like who's going to step up consistently coming off their bench. So some of the same issues that we've been talking about with the Knicks have manifested with Denver, and obviously they've gone to Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup. Christian Brown was sort of their big minutes guy off the bench. Julian Strother, Puerto Rican brother, who I love, but has not been consistent this season, and we didn't get much from Peyton Watson at all. So it was a bench battle that is winnable for the Knicks in that regard. And, it helps when Precious Achiuwa is productive in his minutes, when Deuce McBride is productive in his minutes as well. And Cameron Payne, actually, for a cameo. Like Cameron Payne, like he gave you some instant offense and, just kind of faded to black. It was 11 minutes. It was short, but, I feel like it's a Cameron Payne performance that you would live with.
Yeah, it was a Cameron. He did take one shot to pull up 3 on a break. That was really ill-advised. But outside of that, with the whole crowd grown, outside of that, shout out to my fellow Steelers fan, Cameron Payne, out there. Had himself a solid game. Nostalgic Nick, we see you. Look, Nostalgic Nick has added to his name, Minute Police. Shout out to you, Nostalgic Nick. I see you, man.
Knicks had 2 bench players play 20 plus.
We'll say that again, Brian.
Knicks had 2 bench players play 20 plus in that game against the Nuggets. So, yeah. But
I need to know
to show in progress, as you mentioned.
I need to know if Nostalgic Nick is like the police chief. He's like the chief officer of the Minutes Police. That's all I want to know.
Who's on the wire again?
I see some of you guys have put in some trades here in the chat. JG says wing player archetype that can get buckets on his own. Think Karis LeVert type, but slightly bigger. This person doesn't exist. JG, you are right, sir. You are right. That person does not exist.
They do exist. They exist. It's just, Kevin Durant.
Well, I think that's what JG needs to. The price is high.
Yeah,
JG needs to play exist, but the price is high. I understood what you meant.
The person is generally a star, yes.
Right. He said, so just trade Sims to New Orleans for Javonte Green to give Mikal OG a break. We talked about this. I don't. It was JG. Somebody brought up Javonte Green last week.
Yes.
And I thought it was
with Alex, and we all liked it.
With Alex, we were talking about that, and we also Alex from Knicks Fan TV. Shout out to Alex for Taurus. We all thought that was a pretty interesting move there for him to go. We're gonna take a couple more before Ian joins us shortly. Trade for a big man. Yeah, I think that's a lot of Knicks fans would possibly like to see that, but that depends on what happens with Mitchell Robinson. We're going to get into that when we talk to Ian about that in a second. Another one we have here, Kessler. Okay, so you want Walker Kessler for Kolek, assets, and Sims for Burks.
I don't think Miami.
I'm going to be honest. Burks. You're not getting Walker Kessler for Kolek.
I don't think you're getting. Yeah, I think
now Sims for Burks.
A lot of assets, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of assets.
A lot of assets, maybe. But remember, Danny Ainge is over there with Walker Kessler, and honestly, Utah is not in a position where they need to part with Walker Kessler either. Like even from a financial standpoint, it's fine. He could be part of your rebuild. Like they shouldn't be in a rush to move on from him anyway. So I think, which is to say, if you're going to get him, I think it's going to take more than Kolek and whatever's left of your draft capital, because I think they value him.
Okay. We got another one here. So I'd like to see them move Sims for enough space to bring up TJ Warren from the G League. I mean, watching a G Leaguer come up could be interesting depending on what the Knicks do.
TJ Warren's had some injuries, though.
TJ Warren's had some injuries.
Depend on him from on a night-to-night basis.
And also defensively could be a concern.
Yes.
Kenny Ortiz checking in here says, Jonas Valanciunas, if you've watched previous shows, you know how I feel about that. I do not think that is a move that moves the needle for the Knicks in terms of trade.
You can see the pick and roll in your nightmares. Jonas Valanciunas is at the top of the key, the guard is getting the switch, and then it's like, oh my God, Trae Young is going east to west. What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden it's an alley-oop to Clint Capella.
Yeah, it seems bad. All right, we're gonna bring in our guest now. He is somebody I always give him a good introduction because we go way back to covering high school sports together on a bunch of different fields throughout Brooklyn, Queens, all over the city. He is the great NBA insider at SNY. I see him at all these games. I saw him last night. It's my guy, covers the Knicks and Nets for SNY. Ian Begley joins us now. Ian, what's going on, my man?
Dexter, Bryan, how are you guys?
Good, man. How you doing?
How's it going, Ian?
I'm good, man. I'm hanging in there.
Good.
Thought I was joining you guys at 9:15 a.m. and then,
I wasn't going to bring this up.
I wasn't going to do it. Should we share the story with the people? Should we share the
Why
story?
not? A little behind the scenes.
A little behind the scenes. So this is how it goes out for me. I wake up. Ian and I both covered the game last night. I had a little bit of time to sleep in a little later today, so I didn't wake up too early. I wake up and I get some text from Ian. Ian's like, Dex. At first I saw Ian text, I need 5 more minutes. I'm like, what? Ian doesn't need any more time. What's he talking about? I realized we told Ian that originally the show was supposed to be 9:15. We're supposed to go at 9:15 tonight. Ian thought it was 9:15 a.m., which we never do shows in the a.m. because I'm not that early of a morning person. But Ian then called Bryan to find out what the deal was and found out that we were recording at night. Everything was okay.
No, I'll be honest. I was worried about Dexter. I was like,
you sounded like it. He sounded like it. Because he called me in the morning. Granted, I've been up for like 15 minutes, so I sounded like it, as Ian could attest to. Like the morning.
I was good, man. I was good. I was still in slumberland when you texted me. I was good.
Dex, I will say this.
Yes.
There was no AM or PM on the text in my defense.
You know what? You could have told me that, and that is a bad job by me. That is a bad job by me. Granted, we've never done anything in the AM, but you're right. It's fair. It was fair for you to assume. It's a bad job by me. But hey,
I'm happy we're all here.
We're all here. That's all that matters. We are all here. And I'm gonna start off with you by this. We were talking about the 5-game winning streak and how the Knicks have been looking. But before yesterday's game, you were there at Tom Thibodeau's pregame press conference. He did give an update on Mitchell Robinson. Where is Mitchell Robinson? And should Knicks fans expect to see him anytime soon?
I mean, look, he said running and jumping. He was asked about sprinting. I don't think he clearly said that Mitch was sprinting. He did say Mitch was taking controlled contact, which I don't know if you remember with Julius Randle, he was taking controlled contact for like 6 weeks, and then it was determined that he wasn't coming back. Obviously, different injuries, different players, different bodies. But a couple of weeks ago, I'd heard that there was some degree of optimism that Mitchell would be back early mid-February, and the idea that he hasn't been clear for practice yet, it's not good. I don't know what has happened here, but it's clear that things went sideways somewhere from Mitchell Robinson's surgery in May to now, because the timetable had been pushed back to December, January, and here we are. It's going to be February 1st, a couple of days, and he's not even practicing. So something went wrong. Whether it was a surgery or the rehab, things did not go according to plan, and now you're playing the waiting game with Mitchell Robinson as the Knicks prepare for the February 6th trade deadline. Not an ideal scenario, but one they're going to have to deal with.
So, Ian, you're right. You get into what I wanted to ask you next. It is not an ideal scenario. And actually, my producer told me, he was like, you have to ask Ian this tonight. My producer, Ryan Sampson, shouted at me. He's like, you got to ask Ian. Okay. So is waiting for Robinson to return, whenever that may be, and possibly not making a move for a big man at the trade deadline, is that a risk worth taking if you're the Knicks and you're a team that's looking to win now? Do you think that's a risk worth taking that the team would be willing to take at this point?
Yeah, I'm going to say from one perspective, I could see if they get, if you're talking to teams and you're not getting anything back for Mitchell Robinson, or let's say you pair Precious Achiuwa and Mitchell Robinson together and you're not getting value back based on Robinson's uncertainty and his injury. I don't think you're in a place now, if you're the Knicks, where you have to make a deal that, clearly you're giving up a ton and not getting much back. You don't have to make a lopsided trade. And yes, they're in win now mode, certainly. But if you look at the top guys, right, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Karl Towns, Josh Hart, and even Miles McBride. I mean, these guys are under contract beyond this season. So it's not as if the window is closing this spring. And so I just wonder, if they decide, not to trade Mitchell Robinson because the value is not great right now. To me, I can see that rationale because it's not as if you're under the gun. Now, you left yourself in a bad spot at the backup 5 position if you don't get Robinson back. But I just think at some point he will be back. I don't know if you could really, count on him night in and night out. I'm not sure if he's there because of his injury history, but I would, if I'm them, and maybe it's the sentimental thought here with me, because I'd like to see Mitchell Robinson get a shot with this team. But if I'm them, I'm going to sit and wait unless something, falls in my lap, unless the Wizards decide they're going to give up Valanciunas for like a second rounder and Precious Achiuwa and something else. I would not go crazy trying to secure one of these other big guys. I would be patient with Mitchell Robinson, but it's a business, and we'll see how things shake out over the next few days.
I happen to agree. Brian does not. I know Brian doesn't want to be patient. I happen to agree with you. Brian has no interest in patience here.
I want to frame it in this way, Ian. Do the Knicks feel the pressure of the situation? Do they feel like they could afford to wait, or do they feel like they absolutely have to figure out a solution if Mitchell Robinson, in the event that he can't be available to the degree that they want? Like, do they feel like between now and the trade deadline or the end of the trade deadline that, yes, they absolutely have to have something in place in the event Mitchell Robinson is still not even close, as you said?
It's a great question, Brian, and I'd be lying if I told you I knew the definitive answer. But what I do know is I don't think there's a big appetite to make a trade of Robinson right now when his value is so low and you're not going to get a ton back. I don't think there's a big appetite to do that. Now, maybe, look, if you pair him with a Precious Achiuwa and maybe a Pacome Dadier and the second-round picks, and you put together a strong package for an impactful player, that's a different story. But just based on what I heard talking to other teams, I don't think that they're, chomping at the bit to move Mitchell Robinson for, what would be not a good return at this point. And so I think that's kind of where they sit. If somebody, came to them with a strong offer, like anybody, like 80% of the players in this league, Mitchell Robinson's available for trade talks for the right offer. But it's just hard to see right now where he is with his rehab, the uncertainty around his health, that they could get, strong value back for him in a trade.
I guess my follow-up to that would be twofold. One, if he's available for the right offer, what does that right offer look like? And two, do they feel like, they being the Knicks, do they feel like they could actually address the backup center situation without moving Mitchell Robinson and get somebody who could be complementary to him, maybe like a 4-5, maybe a better version of what Precious Achiuwa is giving you right now with perhaps some more stretchability?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that player out there? Like a Jakob Poeltl maybe, but I don't know if Toronto is going to move him. I don't know. Like, Jonas Valanciunas certainly is on their radar. It's a player they would pivot to or at least make calls on if they decided we need some help. We can't do this without Robinson or with Robinson's uncertainty. Right. And I know just the past few days that they are kind of checking around in the market for big men. Now, I don't know definitively if they've decided we have to do this, or we have to do the Mitchell Robinson, or Mitchell Robinson's coming back. I don't know if that decision's been made. I just think that they are, I guess, checking all your boxes, just gauging the market and seeing where things sit. But to answer your question, Brian, directly, I think if they think Robinson can be back even after the All-Star break, sometime in March, I don't think they would go ahead and spend assets to then bring in another big man to try to kind of bridge the gap there. I would think that they would sit tight if they had confidence that Robinson could be back in March and he could play every night and he could give you 15, 20 minutes. I think they would sit tight in terms of adding another big man.
Ian, I'm going to get off trades in 1 second, but I won't come back to it. But I did want to ask you this, because you mentioned Jonas Valanciunas, and we have talked about him and potential trades with Mitchell Robinson a lot on this show, and a lot of fans have brought him up, including tonight before you came on. What do you think about Jonas Valanciunas as a fit for this Knicks team? I would have concerns with him defensively for this team, but what do you think about him if the Knicks were to trade for him? How do you think he fits in with this Knicks squad?
Look, he can rebound the ball at an elite level. He's physical. The lateral movement, the defending the rim is not probably middle of the pack even. But, you look at the options out there. I think Clint Capella is available, and, the Knicks have had him on their radar, even going back to last offseason as a potential center addition. So, those two guys, but in terms of Valanciunas' fit, if you look at this center position, where would you put him? Would you put him like 32, 33? He's probably the worst starting center in the NBA, but he's one of the best backup bigs in the NBA. Just based on his skill set and based on the rest of the bigs available. So fit or whether he's a great fit or not, he's probably their best option that's going to be gettable at this moment. So that's kind of where it sits. And they had interest in Valanciunas in the offseason. And look, Tom Thibodeau is a part of all those conversations. So I can only assume that he had interest in Valanciunas too. And obviously Valanciunas went to Washington, longer contract, bigger contract. But all those kind of tea leaves tell me that there's a comfort level with Valanciunas coming in here and playing.
We're getting asked in the comments about some other players. So I wanted to see or check in on maybe are there other players that they're interested in? Like we've been asked about Javonte Green, for example, someone under the radar like that. There's some Portland guys popping up in the comments. Obviously not the players from Portland because they have a game tonight. But people asking about Toumani Camara, Duop Reith, Delano Banton, who I think has a very interesting skill set to come off the bench with, though Portland doesn't play him a lot because of obviously Scoot Henderson and other guys at the guard spot. But are they looking at some of these other sort of, I guess, lesser known, lesser tier players that are more obtainable that you don't need to use a Mitchell Robinson to get? And who would they be?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about the younger big guy in Portland, yes, talented, but I think at this point, you need a veteran or a player who has proven, night in and night out over a longer stretch that he can give you what you need. And so I honestly, I don't want to say yes or no whether these players are on the Knick radar or not, because I don't know every player that they're looking at. So I don't want to mislead anybody. But I do think that if you're looking at younger players, it becomes like an experience factor and a factor of does Tom Thibodeau trust you to play you right away when you get to New York? And a younger player without a long history of producing in the league, I'm not sure where his trust would be in that kind of player.
No, that makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense there.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away from trade stuff for a second. I want to talk about how the team's playing right now. And you and you're always at all the games. I've been through a lot of games. I said 3 of these 5 games through this win streak. The defense has looked good. We've been in the locker room. We've been asking the guys a lot about defense. How has this team improved defensively? What have you seen in the improvements in this team defensively? Because that's the thing that jumps out to me through this 5-game win streak. And what have you seen from them and how they've improved defensively?
I mean, to me, you look at the 3-point shooting, the opponent field goal percentage from 3, and the amount of threes that they're allowing. And I think they're just getting out to that arc more consistently and quicker, quite frankly, because they were giving up a decent amount of threes, but they were giving them up at such a high clip. Opponents were making them at such a high clip that I think the rotations have been tighter. And then Mikal Bridges, I think he's been flat out better at guarding the point of attack. There was, early on this year, there were some games where I would kind of scratch my head and say, what's happening here? Like, his opponent is kind of blown by him. But more recently, that hasn't been the case. And he said last week that with karl-Anthony Towns playing up in the pick and roll at times, that's good for, the Knicks and for Mikal Bridges. That's what Bridges said. So he liked that. And I can only assume that they've stuck with that to a degree that they weren't doing in the past. And so maybe that has a little bit to do with it. But both you guys saw early in that Denver game, active hands, 3 steals, I think, in the first 5 or 6 minutes that turned into easy baskets. And I don't know if it's just cohesiveness that this developed over, a few months together here, or if it's the things that I mentioned earlier. Maybe it's everything put together here, but it's been a different defense these last 5 games or so.
No, it really hasn't. I mean, I also don't think that it hurts that they had those 4 days off between the Brooklyn game and the Kings
Right.
game. They've looked a little rejuvenated. And speaking of being rejuvenated, and listen, we got to let the people know, Ian. I know I'm tired of talking about it. I know you're tired of talking about it. I know Brian's tired of talking about it. We're always talking about minutes around this team. The fans are talking about it, right? The minutes police are out. But Tibbs, since the Atlanta game, has gone back to a 9-man rotation. Do you see him as trusting his bench more right now? Do you think he's trusting his bench more? And could we see more minutes for somebody like a Landry Shamet? Do you think he's getting to that point where he's trusting his bench a little bit more?
Yeah, look, I think he's showing you, right, that he's trusting Landry Shamet in particular. And, he's giving him minutes. Now, against Denver, I think he played 6 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And maybe that was more so matchup based than anything else. But if you looked at the 4 games prior, he was playing double-digit minutes, and what that did, maybe directly, maybe indirectly, but Mikal Bridges' minutes per game over those 4 games was much lower than it was prior to that. So it was giving Bridges fewer minutes out there on the floor, and so there were downstream effects like that. Now, I do think that, Shamet will continue to get run here because it's clear to me that he's doing this because he wants to see what it looks like. He wants to see if it's effective. And it's worked pretty good based on a win-loss perspective. I don't know exactly why Tom didn't go to Shamet more in the Denver game. But Shamet, if he's making shots, he can be a very good player for you. Even if he's not making shots, I think Thibodeau has said a few times that he likes how he fits within the team defense and within the team's offensive concepts too. If he's not hitting shots, he can still be impactful there. So I would expect him to continue to get minutes here. The question is, if, let's say, Mitchell Robinson comes back or they trade some players who are not in the rotation for a backup 5, would Thibodeau go to a 10-man rotation? I don't know. I would have my doubts, but I don't know. But I do think for right now, Shamet is going to continue to get run, and they'll continue to go 9. And to me, it makes sense as long as Shamet can contribute for you and produce for you.
How much because we actually get this question a lot, and people are interested in the young guys in particular. So what would it take for any of those guys to potentially crack rotation minutes, like Tyler Kolek, for example, Ariel Hockpurdy being a big one, because we talked at the beginning of the season about, all right, between him and Jericho Sims, we know is going to get that first opportunity. We'll see if, Hockpurdy is going to get the minutes down the line. What will it take? And is it just injuries, or is it just that they're young? Like, what will it take for them to potentially crack the rotation down the stretch?
I mean, honestly, I think it is injuries, right? Because I don't see a scenario where Kolek is going to play ahead of Campaign on a regular basis, or, with Hockpurdy, it's a little bit different because if you trade Jericho Sims, and I think that's likely by the deadline, and you don't bring another 5 in, then, you kind of have to play Hockpurdy, and I think they like him. But I do think it's injury because the rotation, Thibodeau is trusting the players he trusts. Not saying that it's not a commentary on how he feels about Kolek. It's just Kolek is a younger guy, and Thibodeau is going with a veteran. And so that's what he's done mostly in his tenure as a Knicks coach. There were a time where there was a few injuries, and Quentin Grimes got in because of all the injuries. And I remember he had like 23 points. Like, he had a tremendous game in a January game. And then he, eventually got into the rotation and earned a starting spot. But it was because of injuries that he actually got those minutes in the first place. So I do think it's more so somebody getting hurt than it is, Tyler Kolek or another of the young guys playing incredibly well in, the G League, or playing incredibly well in a 5-minute stint in garbage time. I think it's just injuries. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, don't expect the young guys necessarily to come there. Brian, you have another one. Go ahead.
Yeah, but Ian, you said it's likely that they trade Jericho Sims. I just want to clarify. You said it's likely, and would that just be a dump, or would that actually be getting something back in return?
You look at his salary, and you look at the Knicks not being able to take back more salary in a trade than they send out.
Yeah,
it's probably tough to get a player back, and so I would assume that it's a pick, 2nd-round pick, something like that that ends up coming back, and maybe somebody to make the money work that they would end up waiving. But yeah, I don't know what the market is for Sims, but I do know that they've had these conversations for a while now, and just based on where things are, I would assume that he is dealt. I do think it's accurate to say it's likely to happen, and where it is, what they get back, I don't know. If I had to guess, it's a second round pick or two.
All right, that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously,
Yeah.
Ian has reported that. We're joined by Ian Begley, SNY NBA insider, covering the Knicks, and that's with us for a couple more minutes. Ian, I want to go back to trades here a second, because there's a talk about what should the Knicks do at the trade deadline, right? They could try to bolster the backup center position. Maybe they look for a forward. Maybe they look for a bigger wing. Do you think this team has a specific area of need that they are targeting or scouring when they're calling different teams right now at the trade deadline and cater to what they do? Is it a 5? Is it a 4? Is it a 3? What are they really looking for here at the trade deadline?
Just based on what I've heard talking to other teams, it's been a big man. That's what their conversations, some of their conversations have been about, a big man. And so that's what I know. But at this time of year, hundreds of conversations happening, every hour, probably every few hours. So, and the media probably hears about 9% of them. So
right.
It's hard to say with a degree of certainty unless Leon Rose is texting me, and he's not. And so I can only say what I know, which is they've been talking about big men. But I do think that, look, anytime you can add a wing, like a wing who can score and who can defend, you do it, right? And so it's interesting because TJ Warren is playing well in the G League, and they're close to the second apron the Knicks are in team salary. But I think at some point they get to a place where TJ Warren's veterans minimum is prorated, and it's at a place where they can slide him in. I don't know exactly when that is. I would have to consult a cap expert, but that could be an option for them, whenever you get to that date, whether it's March, late February, mid-March, I don't know. But maybe they could slide TJ Warren in under the second apron, and he's a guy who then comes in and gives you minutes.
Yeah, like as an example, we actually got a question about him earlier, but Alec Burks, who is with the Heat now, like he's a veteran minimum player at $3.3 million, but his cap hit is $2 million. So I wonder because the Knicks have been so diligent in how they've moved as a front office as of late. I wonder if it's going to be something, not necessarily Alec Burks exactly, although some people would seem to welcome that. But if they end up doing something like that, where they get somebody who, like, yes, their salary is this, but their cap hit is actually lower, so that they can actually, have some flexibility still as it pertains to their cap sheet. I also do wonder if the Jericho Sims deal, because speaking of the Heat, they did do this in the past where they took Dwayne Dedmon, sent them to a team with a roster spot, right, and attached a late second round pick or just a heavily protected second round pick and just dumped them into space. Would the Knicks entertain doing something like that to bring in a TJ Warren or bring in another veteran in a separate deal where it's like Sims and then you attach a pick, dump them to a team with space who just, it's like, okay, we'll take a top 50, top 55 protected pick, and then the Knicks could have that space sort of do something else.
Yeah, I mean, they right now, from a roster perspective, right, they do have that 15th spot where they could slide in a Warren or another veteran like that. So you don't have to free up a roster spot. But I see what you're saying, Brian, in terms of money. And so I guess, yeah, in a perfect world, you create a little more room if you can with Sims. But that cap space, that available cap space at this time of year is very valuable. And, teams, I'm sure teams with bigger deals on the table are talking to the Detroits of the world, the Charlottes of the world, they're trying to use that cap space to get a deal done. And so maybe in the 11th hour, none of that comes together, and Charlotte is looking to use that cap space in that way. But I think right now the priority is probably using the space that these teams have in other ways. And so I would guess that's a Thursday afternoon thing if it were to happen, or Thursday morning thing, because everything leading up to that point would probably be about different transactions.
Yeah, that feels like one. I'll be watching to see if the Knicks do something like that next Thursday. That'll be interesting to see. One more thing for you, Ian. We appreciate the time. Last night after the win, we heard from Nikola Jokic. I didn't hear this because I was in the locker room, but I think it was Brian Mahoney. He came in and asked karl-anthony Towns about it. You were standing next to me. Jokic said that the Knicks were a top 5 title contender. As you covers this team, watches this team all the time, are the Knicks there with their recent play and some of their impressive wins over Memphis, over the Nuggets? Do you think the Knicks are now back to being considered in that contender status?
If you ask me, I'm going to say I need to see more. Like I need to see this level or, somewhere near this level over a longer stretch than 5 games before I go there. But look, Nikola Jokic, he's not going to say that just to say it. Right. And so if he says it, he's won a title, 3-time MVP. You put a lot of stock into that because he knows what those teams look like. And so maybe right now, they're playing as one of the top 5 title contenders in the NBA in this moment, in this 5-game winning streak. But can you do it consistently? Can you reach that level more often than not? And that's something that, I think you have to see before you start to say, yes, certainly put the Knicks right there with Boston and put them right there with OKC. And so I think it's a wait and see thing for me at least. But for Jokic to come out and say that, it tells you how well this team is playing right now, and it tells you the potential that they have.
Yeah, no, it really does. And I think they've been playing some good basketball right now. We talked about that at the top of the show. I think if you're a Knicks fan, you have to like what you see. But I do think it's fair what you said, excuse me, Ian, that they have to show it for a longer period of time. We'll see if they can do it. That is the great Ian Begley. Check him out on SNY and all the great job that he does covering the Knicks and the Nets. Ian, I'll tell you this. Next time I ask you to come on and on this live show, I will make sure when I text you when we talk in person at a game that I say this time PM. It'll never be AM. I'll make sure it's PM, my friend. I will make sure of that. I promise you that.
Let's do it. And if you ever want to switch it to the morning, I'm ready for that too. Just let me know.
Yeah, folks should know. Ian, being the fantastic journalist that he is, he was ready. I was sleeping, but Ian was ready. He can say that for sure. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks, guys. Always good to be with you. Take care.
Good seeing you, Ian.
Again, that's Ian Begley. Check him out on SNY, doing a great job there covering the Knicks, also covering the Nets, and is really plugged in with everything going on in the NBA. We're going to wrap things up shortly. Before we go, you know what we do every week. And I want to, before I do that, let me thank everybody who was sending in comments. And I saw some of you sending in some good comments about the trades, about what they could do. There's some great insight there by Ian into what this team could do before the trade deadline. So we will see what they do coming up next Thursday. But we always close the show out with Ready or Not. I got to shout out our great producer, Jeff Stansbury, because a lot of times for Ready or Not, Bryan and I are the ones that come up with this. I had nothing for anybody this week. I just didn't. I didn't have it. I said that's a. You know why I said Ready or Not?
Because you just listen to Lauryn Hill.
I was listening to some Lauryn Hill.
I knew it.
And I was talking about it. I was listening to Lauryn Hill earlier, and I actually was playing a couple of tracks off the score. And that's why I said Ready or Not. Now, I messed up twice in the show. Couldn't say the name of the show. Couldn't even say the name of the segment. So,
Yeah, I know you too well.
There you go.
I know you for too long.
I seriously was. I listened to some Lauryn Hill earlier. But hey, here we go. Real or not? I hope y'all are ready or not for Real or Not. That's what we're gonna do. Jeff Stansbury came up with some good ones, I think, for us this week. So we appreciate it because I had nothing.
Me neither.
The first one he came up with surrounds a guy we talked a lot about on this show. That is Mitchell Robinson. Now, you heard Ian talking about the fact that there could be some concern with Mitchell Robinson as to when he will return. It'd be nice if you see him after the All-Star break, but can't guarantee that, right? He's just started running. He is not taking any contact. Bryan, real or not ready or not, will Mitchell Robinson make his season debut before March 1st? Will we see him before the 1st of March? What do you say?
Real, and I'll say it's after the All-Star break. To me, the real or not is will Mitchell Robinson make said season debut with the Knicks? That's the part that I don't know about. It seems like a yes, but That's the commenters, please. The 130-ish that are watching right now, which we thank you for. That's humbling, honestly. But what do you guys think about this? I want to see some answers to this question, and also the part about whether or not Mitchell Robinson, when he does make his season debut this year, will it be with the Knicks?
This is a tough one for me, man.
added some sauce to it.
And I'm going to say not. I'm going to say he does not. I didn't say he doesn't make his debut for March 1st. Watch it happen on March 2nd, and I'll be right. I don't think so. Pac-Man,
I think it's
Maine says too. Mitch is playing right after the All-Star break.
He says with the Knicks. He says, do you think it's with the Knicks?
With the Knicks.
His season debut.
I mean, we all hope so. Right now, I'm trusting what my guy Ian said. I think it might be a little worse. I also think the Knicks are going to be very cautious with this.
I agree.
I think they're going to be and that's why I'm leaning towards not. I think they're going to be very cautious. I will say this. Bryan added a little bit of extra pepper sauce on there, or whatever, hot sauce, whatever you guys like to put on there.
Paprika.
I like that Pac-Man Maine put a date on it. I like that. You said real, but then you put a date on it of February 22nd. I respect that, sir.
Yeah.
You put a date
Call
on
your
it.
Shot.
If please come to the show after February 22nd, because we will remember. I remember. I will absolutely remember. What I will say is I do think that he will play for the Knicks after March 1st. I think he will be with the Knicks. I do not think he will be on another team. So I do think he will play for the Knicks. February 22nd, the Knicks actually do not play. They play on February 21st and February 23rd. So we will see.
We'll probably do the 19th that week, since it'll be right before they come back from All-Star.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. You're going real, right? Did you go one? Did you say real?
I go real. I think he makes his debut right after the All-Star break. I also lean that it's with the Knicks as of today. As of today. Check back during the trade deadline live show next week.
Yeah,
at 2:00.
Yes, because none of this
we'll see.
None of this may matter. I don't think it will, but none of this may matter. Hey, I thought I was me. You might have thought I was being pessimistic here, but we've got Humberto Montanes says, I say he comes back against in the third game against the Celtics in April. Damn, Humberto.
Sheesh.
No hope.
Where is that?
April.
That is April 8th.
Damn. That's
the 79th game of the season.
Damn.
Humberto.
I mean, I guess better late than never. I guess. I don't know.
It's a while. I Mitchell Robinson, speedy recovery wishes. We'll see if he does a return in a Knicks uniform. But yeah. I think that's the key to me of that. But I mean, yeah, this is what we were talking about, Dex. It's like it's worrisome that it's gone on for this long, and now you're up against it. It's a week left to the trade deadline, and it's like, could you really afford to wait?
Yeah,
the Cavaliers had their first 3-game losing streak recently, and the Celtics look a little bit more vulnerable, maybe not a little bit more, but like a lot of bit more vulnerable than they did last year, because the math isn't mathing in the same way, and at home they've been kind of a letdown. So
I also think they're just a little bored where they are in the season. I'm not as worried about them, but we'll see. Shout out to
my
guy,
not unbeatable
Greg.
To me, though. They're not unbeatable to me. Although I don't know if the Knicks match up better with them than Cleveland does, to be honest.
They match up better with Cleveland, but
given how Cleveland's
matched up. Talk to me after the February 8th game, and we'll see how I feel about that. Fair. Shout out to my guy Greg checking in. Also saw my guy Wardy, New York Mets content creator. He was in the chat checking in. What's up, Wardy? No one wants Mitch, so he won't be going anywhere. Not so sure about that, JG.
He has a nice contract. I think somebody would take him on.
Yeah, I think somebody would take him. Wardy, what's up?
Good contract.
Shout out there. All right, got to move along. You said real, I said not on Mitch. We will keep note of that, and we'll see who's right and who's wrong. Knicks, we talked about how well they're playing. They're in the middle of a 5-game homestand against Western Conference opponents. The Knicks are currently 3-0. Knicks sweep the 5-game homestand against Western Conference opponents. Real or not? What do you say?
I don't trust the Lakers. And Anthony Davis, he got his annual injury. Doesn't seem to be long-term. So chalk that one up. The Houston one is the one that scares me. If I'm the Knicks.
Scares you?
Listen, Houston, I don't know about their playoff chances because they're still young, and I believe in getting whooped in the playoffs before you actually arrive. So I think they're a second round exit at best. But at the same time,
You've been out here praying at the church of Amen Thompson.
Yes. Houston just beat Boston in Boston. You know what I mean? I'm gonna say real that they do sweep this, just because, like, granted, that game against Houston that's gonna be a tough one. And by the way, that's the first of a back-to-back. The Knicks have to immediately fly to Toronto the next day before they have 3 days rest and then play the Celtics. So they're gonna be off during the deadline, which would be fun. I'm gonna say they just get by Houston. That's a tough matchup, though. Like,
I'm excited.
If we have Knicks fans here watching who have not been paying attention to the Houston Rockets because you largely pay attention to the Knicks, or you just don't have time, like it happens. Amen Thompson looks like he's gonna be next year probably an all-star, like no joke. Dylan Brooks, I mean, he had 10 threes in that game against the Celtics. He's not gonna do that all the time.
Dylan Brooks, your boy.
Listen, he's important to that team. Alperen Sengun, you already know, like he's got his first All-Star bid now. Jalen Green could fill it up. Houston's got depth too. Like, they're good, man. Houston's good, legit.
No, Houston's good. I don't know if I'm going to make that game against Houston on Monday at the Garden. I'm probably going to give myself a day off, so I don't think I'm going to be at that game, but I will be at the Celtics game. I have a St. John's game to go to on Tuesday, so I'm probably going to pass on that. But I kind of wish I was in the building for that one. I'm going yay on this too. I'm going real. I think the Knicks beat the Lakers. I don't trust them. If the Knicks lose to the Lakers, that's a bad loss. I don't trust the Lakers at all. I think the way the Knicks are playing right now with some days off before the Lakers game, I think they win that game. I don't think the Houston game will be easy. I have a lot of respect for that Houston team. Ime Udoka's a great coach. He's coaching that team well, but I think the Knicks will want some payback for what happened in Houston. So it's interesting. Also, the Knicks, they haven't beaten the Lakers at home since November of 2021. So we'll see if they can get that done.
It's going to be a tough game for Wingstop. That's what I'll say. Tari Eason too. Yeah, someone just mentioned Tari Eason, like Jinx, right at the same time.
I'm excited. And listen, Houston's also one of the teams that can give the Knicks trouble because they can switch everything. Mm-hmm. Those are the teams the Knicks have struggled against. It is a good test for them. So we'll see if they're able to do that. Okay.
Might take the under. Not going to lie to you.
I can see that. I think that might be a good play. Okay, last one, real or not. Jalen Brunson finishes the season as the leading scorer among Eastern Conference players. Brunson has 1,217 points scored this season. Giannis, he leads the Eastern with 1,237 points. So just a 20-point difference between the two teams. Brunson, who we saw give buckets to the Nuggets on Wednesday night, do you see him being the leading scorer among Eastern Conference players? Real or not?
Oh my goodness. This is funny because, like, so durability is going to be the ultimate teller of this. Jalen Brunson also he's played a ton of minutes. He will continue to play a ton of minutes. As I'm pulling up totals here, so we have Giannis first, as our producer Jeff outlined, 1237. Jalen Brunson 1217. Tatum is at 1200. Tatum's durable. He plays a lot. He's another one that's going to be in this conversation. You have Donovan Mitchell at 1101, Tyler Hero at 1084. So now you're getting to the point of where, like, all right, now that's going to need an injury, like a not a significant one, but that's going to need an injury. And Kay Cunningham at 1073. I'm going to say no, assume like if Giannis stays healthy enough, because Giannis also has 1237. He has 20 more points on 8 fewer games. And
that's a stat for me right there.
Yeah, he has 20 more points on 8 fewer games and 130 fewer minutes. So if Giannis gets to like 70, 65, if Jalen Brunson, even if Jalen Brunson plays like 78 games or whatever, like, I'm still going to lean Giannis here because it's Giannis. And ultimately, Jalen Brunson, I mean, he doesn't need to do this for his team to be successful. Giannis, to some degree, kind of does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say no, but I think Jalen Brunson will be in the top 3. It'll be Giannis, him, and Tatum, maybe in that order or in some order.
I'm with you. This is another one we agree on. I'm with you on this because of the two things you said. He's played less games and is already still leading the Eastern Conference in scoring. He needs to score for his team, and just the way he plays, he just gets easier buckets and will get to the line a little bit more. Now, can he hit the free throws at the line and how long he takes? That's a whole nother question. But I think that he just is going to need to score more for his team and do more for his team offensively. Whereas Jalen Brunson, I think there's a lot more nights you can see him with the high assist totals like you saw last night because he just plays with better offensive talent around him than Giannis does. So I'm going to say no for Jalen Brunson. Wouldn't shock me if he finished second. Wouldn't shock me if he finished third. I think Tatum right there is important too. But those guys play with much better offensive talent around me. So this is a no for me on that. So
two things you said that are key there.
Yes.
Well, one of them is the shooting, and the other one is, the free throws. Giannis this season from three, which I didn't realize it was that bad, but he has shot a way fewer threes than he typically does. 4 for 28 from three this year. That is 14%. This is the worst three-point percentage of his career. This is the fewest amount of three-point attempts that Giannis has taken per 36 minutes since his second NBA season, which is 10, 11 years ago. Jalen Brunson shoots and makes a lot more threes, and he's way better from the free throw line. Giannis this year is 58% on free throws. Now, he gets there a lot. That's right. That's the other part of this, is he gets there 11 times per 36 minutes. Per game, it's about the same. The 58% from free throw is by far the worst of his career. So you would think, at least from the free throws, threes, I'm not sure. With the free throws, maybe that bounces back up because Giannis isn't a great free throw shooter, but for his career, he's close to 70%. He's at 69.4. He's 58% this year. I didn't even realize it was that bad. I didn't realize the
free throw shooting was that bad.
Yeah, and the fact that he still has the edge tells me, okay, if Giannis stays relatively healthy, and if the free throws can get back to maybe 62, 63%, something along those lines before the end of the year, then okay. The three-pointers, I don't have as much faith in it. He's taking a lot less. So,
he's pretty much eradicated it from his game. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So that's that. All right, I'm still going no here with that. Let us know what you think about real or not ready or not, as I called it earlier in this episode. That's going to do it for this edition of New York Got Game, Knicks Weekly Live. We thank you to everybody for checking in. There was a lot of you checking in today. A lot of great active discussion in the comments. Just to let you know, reminder again, we have another weekly show coming up on Monday. I've got a couple of good guests. We're going to talk about the Knicks and also the Nets. We're going to talk about both New York teams on New York Got Game, what they should do with the trade deadline. So a fun episode around that. And then next Thursday, live, coming to you at 2 p.m. Live at 2 p.m. Bryan and I will be bringing you a trade deadline show. Let you know what's going on with the Knicks and Nets. Stephen Bondi, Knicks beat writer of New York Post, will join us. Also, Brian Lewis, the Nets beat writer for the New York Post, also will be joining us the show. We will have more guests as well. We will add that and let you guys know about that as the week goes on. So please check and follow the New York Post sports account on social media, along with myself and Brian. Trying to think if there was any other notes I have for people. Oh, please, if you like this episode, like and share it. If you missed this, you want to listen to this, you don't want to watch it, you can listen on all digital streaming platforms. Please like, rate, review, the whole nine on that. We appreciate you. As you said, we'll be next week. Can't believe it'll be February already. February 6th, 2 p.m. We'll be coming to you live. Now, you might be wondering, okay, we're coming live on the trade deadline show. Will we get another live show where we just talk Knicks and recap stuff? Yes, we'll be doing another one that Friday as well, to preview the Celtics game, which will be that Saturday, which is a big one. So we'll give you 2 live shows next week.
Yeah. Guess TBD. I'm working on it.
TBD on both of them. But the one next Thursday will definitely be at 2 p.m. So thank you to everybody for checking in. Like I said, support, share, like, the whole nine. We'll be back next, like I said, Monday, new episode, Thursday, live episode, Friday, also another live episode. And we'll also have coverage for you definitely from the Garden next Saturday after the Celtics game. So that should be a good one. He's Bryan Fonseca. Special thanks to our guest, Ian Begley of SNY, for joining us. Also, great thanks to our producer, Jeff Stansberry, for doing all the great work. It's his birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday to Jeff. Hopefully he enjoys a good one and a much-needed day off.
Word.
And thank you to you, the wonderful Knicks fans, tuning in and checking in and commenting and all the good discussion. We appreciate y'all. Peace and love. We'll catch everybody next time on New York Got Game. Peace.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.